We're glad you've joined with us today for our Bible study. I'm Fred Davis, pastor Mending Fences Cowboy Church in Lebanon, Tennessee. We're located on Highway 109 at the former Reba McIntyre barn. It's a beautiful facility. If you're not actively involved in the church, we would invite you to come. God is blessing with new people coming in all the time, and we're reaching some people that seem to have a tremendous heart for the Lord, and we are very grateful for that. We believe that the ministry there is going to grow, and we're going to continue to reach people, and we're praying that God will save many people that come into the fellowship of the church. But we meet at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, and would love for you to come and experience the worship and enjoy the fellowship of other believers. We are in the book of Acts. We're in chapter 21. We're going chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and looking at the life of the early church. And what we're seeing is a lot of exciting things. There's miracles that are being performed. Many are being saved. Lives are being changed. The gospel has gone out. The Apostle Paul has become a missionary. He's been on 3 different missionary journeys. He is now in this passage that we're going to look at in chapter 21. He's on the 3rd missionary journey. He has found his way back to Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is where the movement of Christianity started. So he's been from city to city. He's been all over the place, and he's seen many people receive Christ, and he's seen the Gentiles who have warmly received the gospel of Christ. And now he's made his way back on his last missionary journey to the city of Jerusalem. So we find that he's gone to the temple. He's preaching the gospel, but there has been a lot of crazy talk. They've said that Paul had turned his back on the Christians that were in Jerusalem, and that's just not true. So we find that he has gone to the temple in Jerusalem, and he's beginning to preach, and a group of Jews have come from another city to stir up trouble where Paul is. Matter of fact, in verse 30 of chapter 21, it says, the whole city was rocked by these accusations. Listen to this. And a great riot followed. Now, in America, we have been accustomed to riots. They usually start because of a belief. We see this in our streets. We are in a situation in America where we want to defund the police. Can you imagine what this country would be like if there was no police force? It would be chaos in the highest degree. Cities are wanting to defund the police departments. We're living in a pagan, ungodly world that is in desperate need of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The only hope for peace is in Jesus. So, they've stirred up the whole city. Paul was grabbed and dragged out of the temple, and immediately the gates were closed behind him. As they were trying to kill him, word reached the commander of the Roman regiment that all Jerusalem was in an uproar. He immediately called out his soldiers and officers and ran down among the crowd. When the mob saw the commander and the troops coming, they stopped beating Paul. As I've said before, in the life of Jesus when he was being arrested, in the life of the Apostle Paul, those in authority could find no fault in Jesus or in Paul. So here comes the Roman regiment. When they see where Paul is being beaten, they wanted to kill him, the regiment stopped this. He immediately called out his soldiers and officers and ran down among the crowd. When the mob saw the commander and the troops coming, they stopped beating Paul. Verse 33. Then the commander arrested him, ordered him bound with chains. He asked the crowd who he was and what he had done. Some shouted one thing, some another. Since he couldn't find the truth in all the uproar and confusion, he ordered that Paul be taken to the fortress. As Paul reached the stairs, the mob grew so violent, the soldiers had to lift him to their shoulders to protect him. And the crowd followed behind, shouting, "Kill him! Kill him!" The gospel will either result in a complete change of your life, or it could result in a great riot. That is what's been going on. The very place that those disciples met in an upper room, Jesus appeared to them. He observed the Lord's Supper with them. Jesus spent time with them. As we started the book of Acts, and we see that in that upper room, Jesus told them to meet him there, and he did. Well, Jesus then ascended up into heaven, but he commissioned those disciples to preach the gospel to every person on the face of the earth. That is our commission today. We have that responsibility. But with that responsibility, we need to understand something. As we share the gospel, we are going to face great opposition. Why? Well, when God cast Satan out of heaven, he cast him onto the earth. Since God removed him from heaven, he has been trying to get back at God every way he possibly could. So, what happened? Anytime the gospel is proclaimed, Satan will use the people to cause confusion, because he wants as many people as possible to deny Christ, to live for Satan. And the truth is, you're going to live for the devil or live for the Lord. There's no in between. It's up to you. So here's Paul, and the crowd is saying, "Kill him, kill him." Verse 37. As Paul was about to be taken inside, he said to the commander, "May I have a word with you?" He asked him, "Do you know Greek?" The commander asked, surprised, "Aren't you the Egyptian who led a rebellion some time ago and took 4,000 members of the assassins out into the desert?" Verse 39. "No," Paul replied, "I am a Jew and a citizen of Tarsus in Cilicia. which is an important city. Please let me talk to these people." The commander agreed. So Paul stood on the stairs, motioned to the people to be quiet. Soon a deep silence enveloped the crowd, and he addressed them in their own language, Aramaic. So we are about to see the result of this wild experience in Jerusalem. In chapter 22 and verse 1, "Brothers and esteemed fathers," Paul said, "listen to me as I offer my defense." When they heard him speaking in their own language, the silence was even greater. Then Paul said, and he begins to give a testimony here. We need to hear it. He says, "I am a Jew born in Tarsus, a city of Cilicia, and I was brought up and educated here in Jerusalem under Gamaliel. As his student, I was carefully trained in our Jewish laws and customs. I became very zealous to honor God in everything I did, just like all of you today. And I persecuted the followers of the way." The way means the Christian life. So Paul, in his early days, persecuted the people who were Christian, hounding some to death, arresting both men and women, and throwing them into prison. This is what Paul did. The high priest, the whole council of elders can testify that this is so. For I received letters from them to our Jewish brothers in Damascus, authorizing me to bring the followers of the way from there to Jerusalem in chains to be punished. So, we need to understand, in Paul's early life, he was in opposition to Christianity. He would go out, gather up these so-called Christians. He would take them to Jerusalem bound hand and foot into the city. They would punish them. Verse 6, "As I was on the road, approaching Damascus about noon, a very bright light from heaven suddenly shone down around me." Paul is giving his personal testimony. He's done this on several occasions in the book of Acts. Well, we're going to look at this in our next study and listen to the testimony of the Apostle Paul. Thank you for being with us today.